Welcome to snow day number 2, I guess. I wanted to just do a really short video and share with you my experiences with logic models and theory of change models. So, logic models have been around for a long time. They were actually started by folks at the United Way back 30 years ago. And my cynical side would say that they're pretty much nothing but a shiny version of something you include in a grant application that becomes the pictorial of how the project might work. I don't really like them much because I think that they're too simplistic. A lot of times it's supposed to be your best thinking on what that project looks like, but I don't really think that's the case. I kind of like narrative, but that's just me, and that's what we're talking about. But so it's snowing outside. I'm in Crema, or Arabica, here in Portland. And I'm having this really great breakfast sandwich. It's like this applewood smoked bacon. You throw a little sriracha sauce on it, washed down with a really good, perfectly stretched milk for the cappuccino. And it reminded me of when I first kind of discovered the importance of paying attention to logic models and more importantly, what they're now called theory of change. I'm going to use logic model because I'm kind of old, I guess, and that's what they used to be called. They just recently changed over to theory of change models. They're kind of the same. You'll notice some of the videos talk about them in a different way. But anyway, so what's my experience with logic models? So, I don't know, it seemed like 100 years ago now, but it was, I guess, 2014. 2015 or something like that. I was on sabbatical, and I was in Barceloneta and taking the train from Barceloneta up to Cadaqués to have dinner with some friends, and we're actually going to be traveling from there up to Ville Francais. So it's kind of bittersweet to leave Barceloneta because I just love the peppers Pordron and Pordon, I never get that right, and those little tiny fish that they fry and they serve with the croquetas and the Rioja. Anyway, it's just great. And I guess it's really what Catalan's known for, right? And so anyway, so we're taking the train, we head up to Malgrat de Mar, which is kind of halfway between there and Cadaqués, and stopped for lunch, and it was this really great place right on the beach, and they served like the best Catalan cream, and even better, if it's possible, sangria. You know, sometimes sangria is just a little too sweet. Like, you either add too much fruit or they sometimes throw sugar, and you want to have a little bit of the tannin from the red wine in there, right, with the fruit stuff. So anyway, so between there and Cadaqués, when we were on the train, I checked my phone, and there was a invitation to apply for this grant through the Harvard Pilgrim Foundation. And I'd done a little work with them. They were coming up with this new model where they wanted to evaluate their funding for a local food program. Basically, it's a local distribution program for small farmers and other places that distribute food through food pantries. And not just me, but some other folks had done this. So anyway, they sent out an application or a request for proposal, and the proposal was basically 5 years of funding, 5 years of full salary funding to evaluate their local food program. The cool thing about that is, of course, it's evaluation, so how can you go wrong there? But the second cool thing was that it required at least one visit a quarter to the Harvard Pilgrim Foundation, which is in Boston. So I kind of figured it all out. Like, if I get awarded the grant, I'll go down, I'll stay at the Parker House. The Omni Parker House, for those of you who aren't familiar, makes the amazing Parker House rolls. Buttery, sweet, soft, yum. And so I was really looking forward to that. So we continue our adventure in Cadaqués. We have this amazing dinner in Cadaqués with friends that had come down from Toulouse. It was just over the top. This squid ink pasta with, I call it swimming pool rhyme. So piscina Grand Reserva that comes from the Rioja region, which was just amazing, creamy, just delicious. So from there we head up to Ville Francais. We're going to be staying there for a month. So what I did every day for a week is I'd go down to the local cafe, get a croissant and this amazing chèvre cheeses, and have that for breakfast and write on this grant proposal. And the proposal was to describe to them how exactly we would evaluate the food programs. So I took the tack that it would be the rural programs, and we would do the evaluation of number of food distributed, how much of that food required preparation, and then also a little kind of short 5-question survey that people who got the food would fill out on like what they did with it, with the idea that we could take that, collapse it down, and then that could be distributed to the other providers as the grant kind of expanded. Oh, yeah, the other thing I should have said is, after 5 years of the grant, there was an opportunity for 2 renewals, so it could have been, or it would have been 15 years of funding, pretty much at full wages for this project. So every morning on the beach in his cafe in Ville Francais, Francois and Anita would come, and they knew, he likes the croissant, he loves this really great just local preserves and the cheeses and stuff. So I write every day. So I get down to the section where it says they want a theory of change model in the grant application. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to leave it out because I don't really think it adds to the narrative. I think the narrative actually speaks to what they're looking for. And I don't think they need a graph or a pictorial on how this kind of hangs together with the program and stuff. So I leave it out. So finish the grant, submit it, continue to enjoy the food and just the adventure of taking the train to Monaco and seeing what decadence and opulence looks like there, and coming back to Ville Francais for like amazing food. And so one day, probably 3 weeks into this, the funder calls and says they want to talk to me. So I'm all excited, right? Because this means that we're going to move to the next step, and I should probably start thinking about my reservation at the Omni House. And he tells me that I wasn't selected for funding; that they had selected somebody else. And one of the reasons was because they weren't really clear how the project was going to work, and that he highly suggested that I include a theory of change or a logic model in the application. So we had a great conversation. When I hung up, I just wept, and I wept because I was about to leave this amazing place on the Riviera, and they had this just over-the-top apricot and rosemary preserve, and I knew that I would never get that again, or if I did, because if Francois grew the apricots and the rosemary out back, that next year it would just be different. But alas, here I am back in the States. So I guess I have kind of 4 takeaways from this. First of all, I would say it's important to always follow what the grant funder wants. If they want a logic model and you don't agree with it, probably include it if that's what they want. Second, I guess a logic model does make some sense in terms of like gives people a visual. It might be more helpful for people who are not researchers to kind of get the sense of exactly what your program's supposed to do or how it's supposed to work, so I kind of get that. The third thing is that I would say, third takeaway, these are in order by the way, with 5 up to the most important one. Third thing I would say is always eat the local food. It's easy to just order a burger somewhere, but always eat the local food. The local food is always going to be better, and there's usually a really great story that goes along with it. Fourth is, all things being equal, have the sauterne, don't have the grappa. Sauterne just tastes a little bit better, and I think it's actually really satisfying at the end of the meal. And the fifth and perhaps the most important piece of this is, if you're in the grocery store and you have a choice between a Spanish Rioja Red or a Bordeaux, go with a Bordeaux. It's going to cost you maybe €1 or two more, but it's definitely worth it. Anyway, happy snow day. See you soon.